1. Yo, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Sports PSP. Welcome to a special episode of the Sports PSP podcast divisional round recap. Got my man, Undisputed World Champ. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. So you just turned from being the highlight of Friday nights to becoming Monday Nitro again, huh?
I gotta say so. With all the free time that I have nowadays, hey, you might as well capitalize it. And on a special note, of course, everyone, happy MLK Day, happy Martin Luther King Day. Without Martin Luther King, who knows where we be as a society. So thank you for all the sacrifices, MLK, you've done for us, man. Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
But brother, we got to talk about the divisional round recap games. First, let's talk about the Houston Texans versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, we predicted the Chiefs would win that game. CJ Stroud had a tough day that Saturday afternoon. 8 times he was sacked. 3 of them by George Kalafkas. Played exceptional. But, champ, I noticed there were some controversial calls on the refs that they did not call. There was the hip drop tackle
Yes.
on Dalton Schultz. And by the way, the NFL, they implemented it this season. We talked about this. And the controversial call on Will Anderson Jr. for roughing the passer. And then the other call on Patrick Mahomes when he slid. Henry Teotu, I hope I'm pronouncing the last name right. I apologize if I mispronounce it. But champ, man, look, I don't want to say that Kansas City didn't deserve this victory because they still had to do what they had to do. But is it fair to say that the refs are helping them?
I will say that they are helping, but it's getting to the point where you're going to have to ask yourself that question. And it's getting to the point where we're going to have to start asking the NFL to, hey, when are you going to start implementing some type of rules or some procedures to hold these referees accountable at a certain point? Because it seems like these referees can make some wrong calls and it's just like it's blatant. And when a Hall of and you know it's blatant
Troy
when a
Aikman.
Hall of Famer like a Troy Aikman who played, let's just be honest. He was playing when they was back in the day where you was glutton for punishment back then. You know, you couldn't throw across the middle of none of that. So for a Hall of Famer like Troy Aikman to be calling out the referees like they are, and people are going to say, well, he's jealous he's not being mentioned. No, Troy Aikman has 3 Super Bowls. He has those as Patrick Mahomes. You heard about a lot of it today. That's jealousy. No, he has the same amount of Super Bowls. He's held in high regard, maybe not in the GOAT conversation as a Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, but he was at the forefront of one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history. Troy Aikman has no reason to be jealous. And I'm just going to be real. So when you call it like you see it, don't. He's a legend in the game. He's a legend. So when he calls it like he sees it, hey, that's a clear-cut sign that that's how we the fans are seeing it. But outside of that, I will say this. When you come into that is about as much mistake-free football as you can play. That is about as much mistake-free football as you can play. I mean, you literally played mistake-free. You didn't turn the ball over or anything, and you still ended up giving the game away. And it was a lot of questionable calls, but you cannot take away the 8 sacks because they were not able to protect CJ Stroud. You cannot take away the fact that he was being harried darn near every down. You can't take away from that, and you can't take away the fact that, you know, when you can't protect your quarterback, I always say the quarterback can't throw on his back. When you can't protect him, then it's going to be a lot of smoke in the city, if you will. But there's a lot of things that need to be implemented. Because if you're missing calls like that, and the hip drop tackle was right in front of the referee's face.
I don't understand why they didn't call that, considering the fact that the NFL, they just put in the rule.
Well, the thing is, I looked this up, and it's an interesting stat. I can't pinpoint exactly, but they've rarely called it all season. They've rarely called it all season. They haven't called a hip drop tackle all season. I can think of maybe one, and I watched nearly all the games. I can think of maybe 1 or 2 times they may have called that. But so in fairness to the referees, they haven't called a hip drop tackle the entire time, almost the entire season at this point. because I think they realize the amount of damage that that'll cause.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as and it's getting to a point now where it's like, bro, is the NFL as far as the quarterbacks becoming the NBA? Because you saw how Patrick Mahomes was like slowing down on the sideline in order to try to draw the foul.
Matter of fact, there was even I'm glad you mentioned that. It looked like he was flopping on that one.
Yeah. So I mean, and people are gonna say, well, they flop every play. Not that blatant. And like I said, when a Hall of Famer like Troy Aikman calls you out on that, it's getting ridiculous at a certain point. This is not just a guy like myself that's sitting, at a podcast somewhere, and I'm just calling it as a fan and a savant and a historian. This is a Hall of Famer that's calling that. And you can best believe Troy Aikman got some superstar calls when he was in the NFL. But when it's that blatant, it's getting disgusting at a certain point. And you have to ask yourself this, man. Look, Buffalo's going to have to go in there and they're going to have to play mistake-free football, just like they did against the Baltimore Ravens. But they're going to have to do everything they can to be very, very careful about, the way they're tackling, the way they're doing everything. So, I mean, because it's getting ridiculous. You can't take nothing away because the 8 sacks, the missed kicks, them not being able to turn over, them not being able to capitalize in the red zone, things of that nature. You can't take away that part of it. But when you have blatant, because the thing about when the roughing the passer calls, the two tacklers ran into each other. They didn't even touch Patrick Mahomes. They had a helmet to helmet with themselves.
Which is why Troy Aikman was furious and he thought that the call was bogus.
Yes, and he was rightfully so saying that it was bogus because they didn't even touch Patrick Mahomes. And at that point, he's a runner. He's a
Right.
runner.
It's not like he was
So
in the pocket.
no, and the thing is, if you want to know the way superstar calls is, certain guys don't get the superstar call. Jaden Daniels didn't get a superstar call this past weekend, and neither did Lamar Jackson. Neither did Lamar Jackson when he got busted up on the sideline. So the NFL, I understand. Look, I understand that your superstar team, your cash cow team, is gonna, that's your cash cow. You got a lot of elements when it comes to that team. You have the superstar quarterback, you got the three-peat, you have the Taylor Swift aspect of it. Now
Caitlin
it's
Clark.
now, yes, the Caitlin Clark factor. So you got a lot of things coming in courtesy of this team right here. But at certain points, you got to say to yourself, okay, do I want my fans to think that this is rigged? Do I want these fans to think that this is no longer the NFL and that this is the WWE, that this is choreographed? Because at a certain point, when these referees getting these calls wrong, it's getting disgusting. And for the people who's going to say, well, the referees, no, you're only saying that because your team is getting the favorable call. If it wasn't your team, if you was playing Atlanta and they got a call like that every single game, you call it like you see it. So call it as we see it.
I agree with you, champ. I do think there are a lot of components. It's a culmination of things because, of course, Kansas City, they still have a chance to do something in NFL history that's unprecedented, which is the three-peat. You have Patrick Mahomes, conversations as the GOAT. Andy Reid, conversations as far as the GOAT, the greatest head coach of all time, Travis Kelce, greatest tight end of all time. And then it does help when you have a Taylor Swift coming to the games. Anytime, whenever Travis Kelce catches a pass or a touchdown or whatever, immediately they're going to show Taylor Swift. And you also got the face, not only of the WNBA, but arguably in women's sports, other than Naomi Osaka, in my opinion, and Caitlin Clark.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just think, and look, Will Anderson, D'Amico Ryans, Joe Mixon, they had a lot to say. They felt like it was them against everybody. I mean, they called out the refs. Needless to say, they're going to get fined because, again, anytime when you say something about the refs, of course, the NFL, they're going to do something about it. Remember, last year, Patrick Mahomes got very furious about the Kadarius Toney flag back in Buffalo at Kansas City. He and Andy Reid got a fine for it. So don't be surprised if Houston with this one. But look, Kansas City, their defense. Steve Spagnuolo called a great game plan. George Karlaftis, Chris Jones. they went after CJ Stroud. And CJ in that game, I mean, he got nicked up pretty bad. So my thing is with Houston, I still believe they're going to be a team in the AFC as long as they have that quarterback, as long as they have that head coach. They're in that division because if you look at the AFC South, it's theirs to lose. Indianapolis, you're still waiting to see if Anthony Richardson can grow, develop his game. Neither of us at this point are sold on Trevor Lawrence. And Tennessee, they have the number one overall pick. They're going to draft a quarterback, whether Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, because nobody's interested in Will Levis, aka the mayonnaise man. But when I look at Kansas City, they're going to be the team for the foreseeable future. But I do get, but I understand, champ. But these calls on the refs part, they have to do a better job because if you continuously allow that to happen, then people are going to start questioning the integrity of the game. People are already saying it's scripted, it's rigged, conspiracy theories, stuff like that. And if you're the NFL, you don't want that. Even though you would love to see history transpire, at the same time, you don't want to deal with those types of controversies. And then you don't want diehard football fans like ourselves to be furious.
I agree on 100%. But the funniest thing about that game, regardless of the controversial calls and everything, that was the highest rated game on ESPN
It
this season
was, yeah.
with 35 million people tuning in. So regardless of the controversy, we still go watch it. So and I think that's why the NFL is like, okay, we're not gonna do too much. We're gonna do enough to address it, but we're not gonna do too much. But hey, y'all got to do something about these referees, man, because guess what? I don't ever think the ratings will go down as far as the NBA or another or any other sport is concerned. But when you lose that hardcore fan base, you've lost something.
Yes.
Then you don't want to lose that. And like I said, you don't want the fans to think it's rigged. These guys are going out here putting their blood, sweat, and tears and everything. So you don't want the fans to think it's rigged or something might be going on that is not supposed to be. So they got to do a better job of the refereeing, finding these referees and making sure, hey, if you don't referee this game right, you're not gonna be a referee for very, very long.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the next game on Saturday. Saturday night, the Washington Commanders versus the Detroit Lions. Detroit coming in was a 9.5 point favorite, and my God, the Washington Commanders, for the first time since 1991, they advanced to the NFC Championship game. Jaden Daniels, what more can you say? 22 of 31, 299 yards, two touchdown passes, a QBR of 91.8, a passer rating of 122.9. You look at the running game, you've mentioned before, Brian Robinson Jr., 15 carries, 77 yards, two touchdowns. Austin Eckler, 6 carries for 47 yards. Washington, 182 yards rushing, averaging 4.3 yards per carry. Terry McLaurin, 4 catches, 87 yards, including the 58-yard touchdown. My God. And also, champ, Washington's defense, 5 turnovers. That's how many turnovers that the Washington's defense accumulated in Saturday's game against Detroit. I will give you credit because you have called Washington. You said you wouldn't be surprised if they went to the NFC Championship game, and I'm shocked because again, I am a Commanders fan, right, and love this franchise, love this organization. I'm telling you, man, this is only the beginning because again, this is not the previous ownership with Dan Snyder. We're in a different direction now with Josh Harris and Magic Johnson. Very ecstatic to see what with them there. It was great to see Kevin Durant post game celebrating with the guys. Washington have really impressed me, man. I am totally astounded with how the way they won that game. I mean, Jaden Daniels, and I agree with Damian Woody based on the play so far in the postseason, he has looked like the best quarterback in the playoffs. And I don't think anyone could argue or dispute that because for a rookie under these types of circumstances to play this well has been magnificent. Now, unfortunately for Washington, they did lose Sam Cosmi, their best offensive lineman. He's out for the NFC Championship game due to a torn ACL. I am concerned about that, champ, because as you often said, quarterback can't throw behind his back. But for Philly, and we'll talk about Philly later on. It ain't gonna be easy for them going up against Washington. And even though, and we'll discuss our picks on Friday night on the Sports PSP pod, I think this is going to be a very entertaining and exciting game. As for Detroit, huge disappointment. Dan Campbell. I mean, Ben Johnson has already gone to Chicago. We'll discuss about him. But 12 men on the field on fourth down, you couldn't call a timeout in that situation. And on top of that, Jared Goff with them turnovers. And Ben Johnson, what were you thinking on that trick play with Jameson Williams throwing the football? Okay, I get Jared Goff with them turnovers, but why would you let your wide receiver throw the football? Unless you told me that Jameson Williams was actually trying to run it, kind of like how he did on the reverse for the touchdown, in which Teddy Bridgewater handed it off to him. Why would you do that in that type of situation? But I give a lot of credit to Washington. Dan Quinn, definitely in the conversation for Coach of the Year. Cliff Kingsbury, offensive genius, and he's shown it time and time. Dan Quinn doesn't play not to lose, goes for it on fourth down. I am concerned about the rushing component, champ, because if you look at Washington's defense, they're 30th in the NFL as far as stopping the run, and they gave up 201 yards to Detroit's offense as far as rushing. But still in all, first time since 1991 they advanced an NFC championship game, man. What were your thoughts about the game? And another question, is this the best rookie season we have ever seen? Because even CJ Stroud had a hell of a rookie season last year, has even confirmed that Jaden Daniels is having the best rookie season ever. What's your thoughts?
First, I will have to say this. With Cliff Kingsbury being the offensive guru around this offense and how far he's been able to take a coachable quarterback, is there any indictment on Kyler Murray at this point?
Sad to say, yes, because remember, the Cardinals, when they handed Kyler Murray that contract, they put a homework clause.
Yeah. So, and people were saying was blaming Cliff Kingsbury about the collapse that was going on. And for how the first half of the season you get started, hot, and then the second half you got cooled down. But it seems like this year it started off, it eased up just a little bit because the league kind of caught up with what they was doing, and then it skyrocketed once again. So you got to ask yourself, is that further in an indictment now that Cliff Kingsbury has a very, very cooperative and coachable quarterback? Is that a further indictment on Kyler Murray?
Even
But
though Jaden Daniels is a rookie,
yeah,
but when you look at Kyler Murray, he has that type of potential because his first 3 years in the NFL, he started off well, particularly in year 3 when he was the runaway favorite for the first half of the season for the MVP, and then he cooled off. So you can make that argument.
yeah. Hey, but hey, calls to show you that Cliff Kingsbury can coach. But I digress on that. Is it the best rookie season ever? I would have to say yes. Look, he didn't come in with a hell of a lot of weapons. We understand Scary Terry and Zach Ertz, not to mention the two-back system that you guys have. But he didn't come in with a hell of a offensive line. He didn't come in, although they have good defensive players and Bobby Wagner, just to name a few on that team. Montez Sweat, gone. Chase Daniels, excuse me. Yeah,
Chase Young.
Chase Daniels.
Chase Young.
Chase Young, excuse me. I'm saying Chase Daniels. I apologize.
It's okay.
Chase Young, gone. Jonathan Allen, hurt. So Deron Payne, Bobby Wagner, Lattimore, a few key players. Not
Dorrance
exactly.
Armstrong.
Yes, the Armstrong. A few key players here and there, but not that stifling defense that you are really hoping that's going to shut someone down. They will give up a few big plays here and there. In fact, when you think about the rookie seasons that rookies have reached the NFC Championship, when you think about Sean King, you think about that vaulted defense of the Tampa Bay Bucks and how he was able to build them out, and how they were able to build him out of certain situations. You
Joe
think about Mark
Flacco.
Sanchez, you think about that stifling defense that he had. When you think about almost any rookie that made it to the NFC Championship, you always think about their defenses and their weapons first.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Sanchez, Sean King, Joe Flacco, Ben Roethlisberger. Those are the four that come to mind. All of them came in with stifling defenses, a good running game, and hellified coaching. When you think about what they came in with during this season, the jury was out on Cliff Kingsbury, like I said it earlier, because of how things turned out in Arizona. The jury
Mm-hmm.
was out on Dan Quinn with not only 28-3, which he suffered with my Atlanta Falcons, but with how sometimes the defense would go up and down in Dallas. And, sad to say, the jury was out on Jaden Daniels because of his size. He's not exactly the biggest guy in the room when you walk in.
Tall,
He's
skinny
not
kid.
exactly Josh Allen's size or Lamar Jackson's size and height. He's a little guy. He's not that big.
He's 6'4".
So you're 6'4"?
He's 6'4", but barely over 200. He's like the NFL version of KD, Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Tall, lanky.
Yeah. So it was just a question on if he was going to be able to sustain that punishment at the NFL level. So the jury was out on a lot of the things. Not to mention there was still, after last year, there was still that stink a little bit on the Dan Snyder regime.
Right.
So there was a lot, and sad to say this again, there was a little bit of a jury being out on Magic Johnson and Josh Harris. Remember, in an interview with Ben Johnson, who's now at the Chicago Bears, he did not want to go to Washington because Magic Johnson and Josh Harris were quote unquote basketball guys. So the
Right.
jury was out on a lot of things around that organization. So he didn't come into a situation like, having a Joe Gibbs and a plethora full of weapons, having some hogs as far as some offensive linemen that was just going to come out and just show out. This was an organization built from scratch. So when you think about the fact that, and this team went, and a lot of these players were there last year with Sam Howell, and the team only won a handful of games. So when you think about that big of a turnaround in just 1 year, and you're not only going to the NFC Championship, you are playing against a team that you legitimately beat before when they was at full health with all of their weapons.
Mm-hmm.
You beat them during the regular season with all of their weapons. And the fact that Jaden Daniels has been very, very poised. He has been very, very comfortable in his environment. I mean, if you talk to anybody in that locker room, in that organization, they say nobody works as hard as he does. You have to say it's Jaden Daniels. He didn't have a stifling defense coming in. He didn't have a lot of the things that a lot of these rookie players come in. He didn't even have as much as the guy who was drafted before him, Caleb Williams.
Yeah,
When you
and
think about
Caleb
Caleb
Williams, he
Williams,
got loaded with
yeah,
offense. Cole Kmet,
yes.
DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and
Mm-hmm.
he had a lot of offensive. Sorry to steal your thunder, Chip. He had a lot of offensive fire. With Jaden Daniels in the meantime, he had Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson Jr., who had durability problems, Austin Eckler, who I like, who's had durability problems himself. But I've told you about that offensive line. But
Mm-hmm.
thank God it's not as bad as Chicago's offensive line. I will say that in that regard. But Washington, they had to start from scratch. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you had to go from McDonald's to now all of a sudden a 5-star restaurant. That's how
Michelin
much.
star.
I mean, you had to go from chitlins and pig's feet to now to now steak and lobster. That's how much. That's how far Washington has come, because you went from moribund to atrocious to now all of a sudden legitimate, and you're only steps away. As you mentioned, we are a few hogs away from offense. Now we do need some help with the DB position. I would love to see them draft a cornerback so that Marshawn Lattimore can help them out. We definitely got to stop the run defense, because especially if we're going up against a guy like Saquon Barkley, But I do think Washington has potential. I don't think it's a fluke or an aberration. I think people need to pay more attention to Washington because this is not Dan Snyder running the show anymore. This is a new organization with Josh Harris and Magic Johnson. And one thing we know of Magic, anything he touches turns to gold. And he's not going to tolerate a bunch of nonsense. And I'm glad for Jonathan Allen too, because last year he talked about how he was tired of losing. Well, that ain't the case anymore. Washington is actually winning. Washington is actually doing something. And the beauty of it, champ, they didn't win the division. You don't know if Philadelphia is going to win that division next year because if you look at it historically, when is it that a team in that division won it back to back years? You got to go back to the early 2000s with the Eagles, with Andy Reid as the
Mm-hmm.
head coach. And when you look at Dallas, I'm sorry, Jerry Jones running the show. And by the way, champ, speaking of the Cowboys, don't you find it pretty ironic? The Eagles, the Giants, and now the Washington Commanders have recently been to a conference championship game, and Dallas hasn't even been to one since the year they won the Super Bowl in '95.
I find it quite ironic, but it doesn't surprise me. They look, when you have good ownership and you got good general managers, and like Magic Johnson said, big shout out to Magic Johnson.
Thank
You
you.
put guys in place, and every owner realizes this. Step out the way, let them do their job. Jerry Reinsdorf said this. I mean, from the great owner from the Chicago Bulls. He said this about Jerry Krause. It was like, well, why do you let things happen between Jerry Krause and your team? And he said to himself, the only job that I have as an owner, is to put people in certain places so they can be successful, get out of the way and let them get their jobs done. I don't know anything about the subject that they're talking about. And that's how a lot of things should, and that's how things should be in the NFL. With Jerry, he wants to be out front. He wants to be in the spotlight. And guess what? You're not going to get very, very far in that line of work. And these coaches that are trying to get these next crop of good coaches that are now becoming, that have, that were offensive coordinator, like Ben Johnson, like Aaron Glenn, like, Leslie Frazier, guys like that. They're not trying to come to Dallas and butt heads with Jerry Jones. They're
No,
not.
they're their own
And I
man.
don't blame them.
Yeah,
I don't
who
blame them.
wants to? I mean, look, I've said it before, champ. Mike McCarthy, even though he's a Super Bowl champion, but I've said this before, even though I respectfully disagree with Flash, he a product of Favre and Rodgers. Because other than that, what has he really done? I mean, the clock management issues, the leadership. I will give McCarthy this though. In 2023, we saw the best of Dak Prescott.
Yes,
That
we
was the
did.
year Dak Prescott was the runner-up for the MVP, led the NFL in touchdown passes, having a bounce back year because the year before, he and Davis Mills of the Houston Texans, they were tied for the most interceptions the year before. And Dak Prescott had a big bounce back year. But with Jerry, and I know we're digressing a little bit, he will continuously hire yes men. And which is why, champ, I would not be surprised nor shocked at all he hires Brandon Staley because there's no chance he gonna hire Prime. You really think Prime is actually gonna coach the Dallas Cowboys? Prime is his own man. If you're gonna give Prime an opportunity, let him do his job the way he sees fit. But that's not the case with the Dallas Cowboys. Thank God Stephen Jones is there because he's the only person that could get into Jerry's ear. After all, this is the same Stephen Jones that talked Jerry out of drafting Johnny Manziel.
Mm, 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 mm. Sad, tragic, even. It's tragic, even. But yeah, that's the reason. The thing is, you had a. What's so funny about the Cowboys at this point is you had a several. You had. It's funny when you think about this. They had a 2-decade head start on y'all. They had a 2-decade head start on you when Dan Snyder bought the team. They had a 2-year head start on y'all. 2-decade head start on y'all. They still ain't won. They still ain't went to the NFC Championship. Y'all had. How do you get a 2-decade head start on a team? Because if you remember back then in the early 2000s, Washington wasn't doing so good.
Only managed to win 2 playoff games under Snyder's stewardship.
And even after they brought Joe Gibbs back, even after they bought the Super Bowl winning head coach back, they still wasn't able. So you had a 2-decade head start on the team, and you still wasn't able to not get caught. You still got caught up with futility, mediocrity, just being good enough. Hey, gotta ask yourself some questions. What do I need to change?
It's too late for Jerry at this point because when you reach a certain point in age, what's the likelihood of you changing? Jerry's still going to collect his money. Dallas Cowboys is still America's team. It's still the most lucrative, profitable team, not just in the NFL, but in sports. So Jerry's still going to make his money. But at the same time, Jerry, you want to see a Super Bowl. But if you want to win that Super Bowl, why don't you hire a head coach that you're going to allow to do the job? Problem is, Jerry's too heavily invested on his team. He's not only the owner, he's the GM, team president. Think about this, champ. He is doing press conferences right after the team loses. Normally, you would expect the coach or the players to do the press conferences after the game. He does it front and center. Unlike most owners, Jerry has his own show. I mean, it's like therapy for Jerry because you actually hear whatever Jerry Jones has to say, even though how crazy it is. But look, thank God that's not the case with Washington. Magic understands what Magic is a champion himself. Magic knows knows how to win, what it takes to win, the requirements to win. After all, he learned from, of course, your great owner, the late great Dr. Jerry Buss. God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Jerry Buss stayed out of the way, and Magic understands that. And Magic knows what it takes because not just the success with the Commanders so far, look at what he's done for the LA Dodgers. Look at what he's done. And also the city of Los Angeles, the Starbucks, the Magic Johnson movie theaters, the Burger Kings, the fitness centers. When Magic touches something, you expect something great to happen. And it's surprising to me, champ, with Washington, they're able to come this far. And this is really like what year 1, year 2 of this ownership. So that's just telling you how much how much how great it's going to be as long as we protect Jaden Daniels. But to Detroit, what do you say about this loss?
Oh man, this might be the beginning of the downfall. It might just be. You just lost the game in a bad fashion. Now you just lost your genius offensive coordinator. That's number one. And if you don't believe that an offensive coordinator has impact on what your team can do, look how badly the Atlanta Falcons went down after Kyle Shanahan left. You had Steve Sarkisian, who was there for like a couple years, but it was never the same high-powered offense as it was. Look at that impact within itself. I mean, if you don't believe an offensive coordinator has that type of greatness and he can bring the best out of them, look at that as a prime example. That offense for the Atlanta Falcons was never the same. So I know that we made the playoffs the year after that, but it was never as crisp as it was. If you don't believe how good an offensive coordinator can make a player, look at what Lamar Jackson did this year. Although he had a lackluster playoff game, look at what he did for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the only quarterback that is exempt from that is Patrick Mahomes. Because remember when he lost Eric Bieniemy, his play didn't suffer as much.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Matt Nagy.
Yeah, he had Matt Nagy. So, and he was still putting up numbers. He's not putting up those numbers this year, but, he's still Patrick Mahomes. So that's how much of it. And then you're probably about to lose your emotional leader on defense in Aaron Glenn. He may be very well going to the New York Jets,
where he used to play.
Yep. So you're about to lose 2 key pieces. And look, remember what happened to the Philadelphia Eagles when they lost 2 key pieces on their offense and their defensive side of the ball? When they lost Shane Steichen and the defensive coordinator, he went down to Arizona. Remember how horrible that team looked just last year?
Yeah.
They started off 11-0, and then down the stretch, poof. So that's how much of an impact that an offense and a defensive coordinator has, especially when you have an emotional leader like an Aaron Glenn in that locker room. So this might be the beginning of the downfall. Now, as long as they have Dan Campbell, do I expect them to be good? Yes. But you are for sure, unless you go and get Steve Wilks or Robert Salem in order to replace Aaron Glenn and then turn back around and perform some miracle in order to get another hot shot offensive coordinator, that is definitely going to be it's going to be a problem in the coming years.
Not to
Plus,
oh, my go ahead, champ. No, go ahead, champ.
Plus, attrition starts to kick in because now, in a few years, you got to pay Aiden Hutchinson. In a few years, you have to pay Jameson Williams. In another few years, you have to pay Jahmyr Gibbs. And in another few years, you have to bring that entire defensive side of the ball back. So attrition, you losing your offense and your defensive coordinators, and, not to mention injuries caught up with you this year as well. So you got to take all of that into consideration at this point. So this might be the beginning of it's not the beginning of the end of them being good. I believe they're going to be good as long as Dan Campbell is there. As long as he's there, I think they got a chance. But the dominance that team had over the course of the last few years, especially during the regular season, I don't think that's going to be there at least for the first year after. If they're to lose Aaron Glenn as well this year, I don't think that dominance is going to be there because you've already lost the key piece in that offensive coordinator. You've already lost a key piece in that defensive. And if you lose that emotional leader on the defensive side of the ball as well, it might very well be the beginning of the end of the dominance in this organization.
Not to mention, champ, when you look at the NFC North, I mean, Green Bay, even though they've had their share of injuries, we still can't discount them. We still can't discount Matt LaFleur. Then you look at the Minnesota Vikings, the job that Kevin O'Connell did, although they struggled in that game against the Los Angeles Rams, we can't discount them. In Chicago, now with Ben Johnson, and we'll talk about that later, it's not going to be easy for Detroit. And especially, I didn't even mention the rest of the NFC because you still got Philadelphia. You got Washington if they continue to improve. And we can't forget the Rams. We can't forget San Francisco. San Francisco, to me, they had a down year because, of course, Super Bowl hangover and, of course, injuries, things of that nature. But I do believe that they will be better. And for 49ers fans to actually think, well, firing Kyle Shanahan would be the solution, then to be honest with you, you are just, I don't know what to say. Well, I'll let you say it, champ.
You can ship him right on back down here to Atlanta, and we will be glad to take him off your hands. We won't even mention 28-3, not there another time. So I'm just gonna be real. Kyle Shanahan is one hell of a coach, man. And regardless of poor clock management, whatever you want to call it, whenever a coach keep you in contention every year like that, especially with these core players, with the salary cap and everything like that, it's nothing short of amazing. And the only reason why they weren't competitive this year is because, again, injuries caught up with them.
Yes, of course. Brandon Staley. Brandon Ayuk with that injury, that was huge. And then, of course, you mentioned with Debo Samuel, Manos de Piedra.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if there is one offensive coordinator that any team should look at, is the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Because if you look at the job that he did with Baker Mayfield to have another back-to-back 4,000-yard season, Baker was up there with 40-plus touchdown passes, and to help the Bucs win the division. And look, Baker Mayfield, say whatever you want about Baker Mayfield, I think he is a top 10 quarterback, and he's played like it the past couple of seasons. To have this type of performance, Liam Cohen of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he should be considered for another offensive coordinator job, or head coaching job. Heck, it doesn't surprise me because of how much of an impact the offensive coordinators have. Look at what he did with Baker Mayfield. If if Detroit, if you're looking for an offensive coordinator, they want to look at him. Just saying.
Hey, and Eric Bieniemy just got let go from UCLA. Hey, his offensive mind, regardless of what you may think, is no joke. So you're looking to replace. You can replace one great offensive mind with another.
He needs
So
to run the football more, though. That was the thing you
yes,
told me about in Washington. I think he was too more interested in trying to show people he deserving of a job and that he was more of Andy Reid. But
yeah.
EB, back as an offensive coordinator, as long as he knows how to utilize things, I think he should have a shot. But let's talk about the Rams Eagles. Very exciting, a very good game, man. Snow. I mean, look, Saquon Barkley, another back-to-back 200-yard performance, 26 carries, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Eagles ran the ball 285 yards, 28-22. Your Georgia Bulldog, Jalen Carter, on 3rd and 2, made a key sack in that game. I mean, the Eagles, man, and the Commanders Eagles NFC Championship game is going to be tough for both teams. But if I look at the Rams, they hanged in, they did the best that they could given the circumstances with the snow. Um it was tough. It was a tough day for both teams to throw the football. Do you how concerned do you feel, champ, about the Eagles?
Not too much. I mean, I don't feel concerned. Now, granted, the reason I have been on record saying which team I want to win, which we will save that for Friday, but I'm not really concerned other than the injury to Jalen Hurts. That's about it. Because if he's hurt, there's a lot of concern that I have in order for them to generate any offense. Because people may criticize Jalen Hurts, and I know it don't look pretty. I mean, but in the great words of Jimmy Johnson, don't be pretty, be good. I know it don't look pretty all the time with Jalen Hurts and his style of play. He's real hard nosed. He's real straight up. But when you don't have that threat in the backfield of him possibly running or even passing the ball, they're gonna crowd that. They're gonna crowd that line for Saquon Barkley. They're gonna crowd that line. And guess what? You don't need that in an NFC championship. So that's the only concern that I really have. But other than that, look, that defense, shout out to the 2022 national champions, by the way, the Georgia Bulldogs. So the Philadelphia Bulldogs, because half of our defense is on that team.
And shout out to our
Rambo,
good friend Broad.
yeah, shout out to Broad, but Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. Funny thing about Jalen Carter, he was behind Jordan Davis for about a year. But I digress. All of the N'Kobe Dean, he's injured right about now. Get well soon. Nolan Smith. A lot of that championship pedigree from college came right to the pro. So as long as they got that defense and they got Saquon, I feel confident that they can win. Now, I will say this. I wish the media would stop criticizing Jalen Hurts. Stop that. That's ill-mannered. Because if I have a running back in the backfield, why the heck do I need to throw the ball 40 times for? That's asinine. Why bang your head against the wall when it's only 3 steps to go around it? And if you got a back like Saquon Barkley, go ahead, give him that ball 300 times. Give him that ball 20 times a game, 300 times a season, and guess what? Let him cook.
And by the way, he's 147 yards shy of Terrell Davis's record.
Yes. He is to Jalen Hurts what Terrell Davis was to John Elway. Because as you saw last time, although they came within an eyelash of winning, even without him, this team is a hell of a lot more deadlier with Saquon at the running back position. It's a hell of a lot more deadlier. So, yeah, stop criticizing Jalen Hurts. If you have a good running back in the backfield, and he's able to get you some yards, and you play mistake-free football, and you don't have to pass the ball as much, just let that be that. Jalen Hurts plays this year. Jalen Hurts has played mistake-free football. He's been a key part of that. He's been a key part of that offense as well. He scored a key touchdown yesterday, along
Yeah,
with Saquon. I think he had a 40-yard run himself.
yes, the touchdown on the first drive for the Eagles.
Yes, so he is a X factor himself on that team. I understand that we don't like to give him credit because, like I said, it's not pretty. The ball he throws, it's not pretty. The way he runs, it ain't pretty. But like I said, you ain't got to be pretty. I'd rather win looking ugly than to lose looking good. And that is what Jalen Hurts does. He loses, and sometimes it's like, that don't look too good. It's not glamorous to watch as a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen for him to be doing what he's doing.
Right.
But the media really needs to ease up off of it because all he's doing is winning.
But here's my thing, champ. Jalen Hurts, if you actually look at that game, he wasn't really all that bad. There were actually some throws in which he made. There was one to AJ Brown, a beautiful deep ball in which AJ Brown just dropped it. So look, of course, there's been issues with Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and no, even when you gave Jalen Hurts the contract after the Super Bowl year, I don't think you're expecting Jalen Hurts to throw the ball 40 times. I think you would have expected him to improve his passing, but not throw 40, 50 times a la Mahomes, a la Burrow, a la Allen. Not like that. You reason why you added Saquon Barkley to the mixture. Number one, the turnovers Jalen Hurts had last season. And to add a generational talent like Saquon, taking the load off of him helps tremendously, especially with that offensive line. And I look at it with Jalen Hurts, he just has to play smart football. Hey, just go through my progressions, go through my reads. If needed to, I need to run the football. If he gets injured, champ, and if they lose, that just tells you how valuable Jalen Hurts is. Because say whatever you want about Jalen Hurts as a passer. Do I think he's the best passer in the world? No, I do not. But he is effective. And if you take away that, who you gonna put? You gonna put in Kenny Pickett? You gonna put in somebody else against the Commanders, a red hot team in an NFC Championship game at your home field? Now, if Jalen Hurts, and I saw that hit he took, the Commanders, they see that. They're gonna go after him. Not that I'm wishing injury upon Jalen Hurts, but you know the last time these two teams faced, what happened to Jalen Hurts? He
Went
ended up
down.
out of that game with a concussion.
Yeah.
So, and look, Washington, they're going to go after him. They know they have to take the only way for the Commanders to win this one. You going to have to do a valiant effort on your part, Washington, to take out Saquon Barkley and just basically dare Jalen Hurts to throw the football that amount of times. That would be the best way for you defensively, for you to win the game. Because we know Washington, they can't stop the run. They can't. They're 30th in the NFL as far as rushing defense. You mentioned with Dan Quinn, that was the issue he had last year with the Dallas Cowboys, even though he's done a good enough job with this team. Do I think Jalen Hurts gets too much criticism? Yes. I think he gets the criticism because, and again, I saw Trent's podcast, the dude MJ, and he knows his football. But I do get tired of him whenever he thinks that Hurts should be in the same conversation with those quarterbacks because he's been to a Super Bowl, the playoff success. But let me ask you a question, champ. As awful as Justin Herbert played against the Houston Texans, are you telling me if you have a choice between Justin Herbert or Jalen Hurts, who would you rather want as a quarterback? You going with Jalen Hurts? I'm going with
I'm
Herbert.
going, I'm going with Justin Herbert. But the thing is, like I said, all Jalen Hurts does is win. He's been winning since he was with Alabama. And you know this for yourself. He helped carry the Oklahoma Sooners
Big 12
to
championship and the college football
to a
playoff.
Big 12 championship and a college football playoff. So all he does is win. Like I said, it don't have to look pretty. And like I said, if you wanting him to throw he proved it at Oklahoma, and he proved it his first year going to the Super Bowl. He proved it that he can throw that ball. He can throw. with the best of them. It's not going to be pretty, but he can throw, and he's been a threat. And remember, he was an MVP candidate. He's made All Pro.
Had it not been for the injury in 2022, because I think it was the shoulder injury. Had it
Mhm.
not been for the injury, he probably would have won it.
Yes, he won. He went to a Super Bowl. And you can try to, and people, and even during that Super Bowl run, they was trying to discredit it then. And I can understand that Brock Purdy, he was out. They had a few injuries on the way, but guess what? That's football.
Right. And now when I'm listening, Champ, it's funny, Champ, because I was listening to some Eagles fans on YouTube, and they were trying to diminish the Commanders. They really actually felt like, well, it wasn't really the Commanders that actually beat the Lions. It was really more bad Detroit because of Jared Goff. Jared Goff was trash. He was horrible. You expected that come postseason time. That's exactly why the Los Angeles Rams decided to move on from him, get Matthew Stafford, so that they can get to and win a Super Bowl. All those things. But I'm like, wait a minute. Washington, they weren't expected to win that game against Detroit. Detroit
No.
was the favorites. They had Sonic and Knuckles and Montgomery and Gibbs. Jared Goff has had playoff success before. So has Dan Campbell. Washington, you're playing with house money. No one expected you to go that far. And you're discrediting them. You're diminishing their win because of that. Look, the Packers, the Eagles game. We saw injuries on the Packers part. Still, the Eagles did their part.
Yeah.
We could look at the snow yesterday. Hey, that's what comes with it. When you play in a place like Philadelphia or DC or Jersey, Kansas City, Buffalo, around this time, you're going to expect snow. So you might as well just deal with it. But that's the thing I don't understand sometimes with the media and the public. I just think they just get on him, Jalen Hurts, because of the conversations we put him with these other quarterbacks. And I think Jalen Hurts is at best a top 10, top 12 quarterback in the NFL. He's a good enough quarterback. He's a leader. Guys respect him. They admire him. He has a great work ethic, high character guy. Um, what else to say about him? Yes, I wish he could be more advanced as a passer, but still, no, he's the best thing for the Philadelphia Eagles, considering what you had in Carson Wentz. When you drafted Carson Wentz number 2 overall, you thought Carson Wentz was going to be your guy, your savior. And before injury, Carson Wentz he was going to win the MVP. Unfortunately, he got hurt. Nick Foles came in, helped the Eagles win the Super Bowl back in 2017. So, and look what Jalen Hurts has done for you in the aftermath of that. So maybe, look, do I view Hurts the same way I view Herbert, Allen, Lamar, Mahomes, heck, even Jaden Daniels or any of these quarterbacks? No, but he's a good enough quarterback that you can win with. He may not necessarily win it for you, but you can certainly win it with.
I couldn't agree more. And like I said, and I know people are going to say, well, he has a good offensive line. He has a great running back. So did Brock Purdy last year. Are we going to discredit him?
No, but
It's not his fault that he has a hell of a. It's not his fault that he has a hell of a GM. Just like it wasn't Brock Purdy's fault that he had John Lynch. It's not his fault. That's not his problem. His job is to show up and win football games. What has Jalen Hurts done ever since he started for the Philadelphia Eagles? Won football games. So stop putting that on everybody else just because the front office did what they were supposed to be doing.
that's
The
the
front
problem.
office did what they're supposed to do. That's put together a good team and build around your quarterback. Don't
Absolutely.
fault him because, hey, the people who were in charge of this organization did what they were supposed to do.
But that's the problem, champ. With us as fans, it's kind of like I'm sorry, it's kind of like with women. We so used to the type of woman that we want instead of the type of woman that we have a need. A lot of us, a lot of us would love to have Jennifer Lopez as our wife or a beautiful woman as our wife. But it's okay to enjoy and have what you have with the current woman. People just, I think, what I'm trying to say is, champ, people just I think a lot of times people just take things for granted and they don't realize or appreciate what they have. until later down the road.
I agree, and like I said, it doesn't look good the way he played. It don't look good. Sometimes it's like, and I'm guilty of criticizing Jalen Hurts as well. I am. I'm not finna sit up here and flex, especially after my Falcons beat him. But the thing is, it's like, no, it don't matter how pretty it look. It don't matter how pretty it look. A lot of times, guess what? I would rather be ugly and win than to be pretty and lose. That's the thing. You can call it that's an ugly win. Did I win? Okay. Am I going to have I been to a Super Bowl? Yeah. This is my second NFC championship. My second. Out of all of the quarterbacks that have gotten paid, outside of Patrick Mahomes, only two have been to multiple AF conference championship games. That's Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen. Out of everybody who's gotten paid, whether that be Lamar Jackson, whether that be Justin Herbert,
Joe
whether
Burrow
that
as
be,
well.
say again?
Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow are the only quarterbacks other than Mahomes that have been to multiple conference championship games.
Yes, they've been to multiple conference championships. So when you put him, and like I said, he wins. My job as a quarterback is to win. And my job as a quarterback is not to be the reason that my team loses.
Yeah. But that's the thing but that's the thing, champ. I mean, you're in the best place of them all, Columbus, Georgia. There's one thing I know about the South is humility, and you just better accept and take what you have right now. I mean, look, man, the problem is with a lot of us, we just looking for something fancy and something unique, and we love to see that, but sometimes it doesn't always plan out the way you have. Like I said with women, yeah, I mean the type of woman, yeah, that's a beautiful woman on the outside, but what about on the inside? What other things they can do or bring to the table? Just saying.
Yeah, you got a point. Like I said, the prettiest car is not always the best. You can be driving around that Rolls Royce, but on the inside, it's a problem. You can drive
Mm-hmm.
around that Toyota all day and drive all around the country to all your road trips, and it never break down on you. So stick with old reliable, and Jalen Hurts is reliable. So stick with what you know, man. Jalen Hurts is like a Toyota. It don't look pretty all the time, but guess what? It's going to get you not just from point A to point B. It's gonna fill out the alphabet on you. It's gonna go from point A to point Z.
Well,
So
he,
hey, for the
yeah.
media members criticizing Hurts, stop it. He's getting them from point A to point Z. That's all that matters as a quarterback is that you are not the reason that your team loses and that you win. All the rest of that other stuff, fooey.
Well, he should be driving that Honda the way AJ Brown was the yesterday. By the way, that was a smart choice on his part though, because again, I'd be driving a fancy car in that type of weather. Nah, I wouldn't do that.
No.
It was smart on AJ Brown's part. But with the Rams, Matthew Stafford has to make a serious decision. Do you think he retires?
Uh, I don't think that he does. Well, wait a minute. Let me retract that. I think that he does, but they're gonna have to do something drastic if he does at the quarterback position. I don't know if Stetson Bennett is quite ready yet. I
Right.
don't know if he's quite ready yet, but I think it's that time. But I think that it's about that time for him to retire at this point. He's taken his team about as far as he could go. He won a Super Bowl. They won the trade. The whole debate who won the trade between Matthew Stafford and the Detroit Lions. It's been proven that they have won. The St. Louis, damn, the Los Angeles Rams have won that trade. So you've done what you came to do, and with all of the stats that you've put up, with all of the things that you've done for the city of LA, hey, I think it's safe to say that one day you'll be in Canton. One day you'll be in Canton. The only reason why he doesn't have more All Pros, the only reason why he doesn't have more Pro Bowls, is that for the majority of his career, he
Detroit.
was in the pit of obscurity in Detroit.
Right. And look at the quarterback in that division in Green Bay. that you had to go up against. That was Aaron Rodgers. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine if he were somewhere else other than Detroit. That could have changed the narrative of Matthew Stafford. But the last game, champ, Ravens, Bills. You had the Ravens winning this one. I had the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson, he deserves some blame. I mean, the fumble, the pick. I cannot absolve Lamar Jackson, but if we're gonna hold Lamar Jackson accountable, because of course what he's done, 2-time MVP, about to be a 3-time MVP, gonna be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm sorry, champ. I cannot let my guy, my OU brother, Mark Andrews, off the hook. Because just like Lamar Jackson at his position, he's one of the best. Mark Andrews, top 3, top 5, however you want to put him. But the fumble, he had some drop passes, especially that 2-point conversion. Lamar
Mm-hmm.
Jackson on that last drive, I don't know what else you can ask from Lamar Jackson. On that drive alone, champ, you could not ask any more from Lamar Jackson. The throws, the escapability, and then Mark Andrews on that drop pass. And look, we're going to hold Lamar Jackson accountable because with them turnovers, he played clean football. 41 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions. But he picked the worst time to commit those turnovers because when those turnovers, Buffalo capitalized. It's not like Josh Allen had a spectacular game himself. Didn't even throw for 200 yards. So Josh Allen just played clean football, what he's done all throughout this season. Buffalo, they were going to get their revenge on Baltimore, man. What were your thoughts on the game?
Uh, what I like about Lamar is he came right out in the media and said that we got to hold on to the ball, and he took accountability for himself, and he took up for his teammate. Like, hey, we got to hold on to the ball. And he's the first thing he references the fumble that he had and the interception that I had. So big ups to him for knowing the accountability that he has and the responsibility that he has as a quarterback. So and he said himself, I'm tired of this stuff. I'm tired of losing in the playoffs. So I mean, big ups to him for understanding the stage that he's on and the status where he's at this point. So big ups to Lamar. I will say this. Look, I will say this. Do I blame all of this on Lamar? No, because the thing is, those turnovers happened earlier in the game, and you still had a chance, not once but twice. Mark Andrews was wide open, and he dropped the ball on a 2-point conversion. He was not to mention that fumble. You was wide open again. Wrap up that ball. Stop being fancy. So that's not one chance that you had in order to win the game. That touchdown where that 2-point conversion, you had a chance to tie the game. When that fumble happened, you had a chance to go ahead. Because remember, the Bills had not kicked that other field goal as of yet. So they had a chance. If Mark Andrews doesn't fumble that ball after he catches that pass in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left to go, they very well go ahead and they win. So you got to put a lot of the blame on Mark Andrews. I understand that. Look, the jury's out on Lamar at this point. Everybody is trying to blame. If Lamar would have had a decent game, which he did, he had a decent game, they would have still tried to blame him for everything if they would have lost. And I understand why. He is going on a 3-time MVP. He's about to be MVP3, and he hasn't been to at least past the AFC Championship. He hasn't won a conference championship with one of the most storied franchises in the NFL in the Baltimore Ravens. So I understand why the blame is going to fall on his shoulders. But you have to think about this. The Ravens, when Mark Andrews fumbled that ball the first time, the score was 19. It was 19-23, I believe. I think it was 19-23.
24.
So it's 24. He scores that touchdown, they go up by at least 2 points. And Josh Allen has to bring his team back in order to put them in a position for a field goal. Last drive, they go right back down the field. Boom, boom, boom. Lamar Jackson touchdown. And Mark Andrews drops the ball again. Shades of the great Jackie Smith from the Dallas Cowboys. Remember, he's got to be the sickest man in America when he dropped that ball when he was wide open in the end zone in the Super Bowl against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Shades of that all over again. So, yeah, a lot of that falls on the shoulders of the quarterback. But when your quarterback puts you in the position in order to win the game, I give Lamar like 40% of that blame. 40. Because those were two key positions that they had to win the game on that first fumble that Mark Andrews had. They had the potential to win the game that first one.
They did.
Yes. Then you come back. We come back to you again. Like they always say, you got to have amnesia in football. We come back to you again. Boom, you drop another pass. It's the Mark Andrews game. I put 40% on that on Lamar because he is the quarterback. You are the MV3. You threw an interception in the first half. You had that bad turnover when the fumble went over your head and you tried to make a play on it. But the thing is, Mark Andrews, the fumble play, you had great, it would have put you in great field position in order to go up in that game. And then you had the game winning, then you had the tie. At minimum, a tie. So, yeah, I have to call that the Mark Andrews game. Yeah, we're going to blame Lamar because he's the quarterback. Rightfully so. MV3, you're supposed to play better. But one catch could have led to a score on down the line because that would have put them on the 30, right, on the Bills 30. And then you was right in the end zone. And he put it wasn't like it was a bad pass. He put it right in your stomach.
And you can ask Todd Monken to call a good play than that.
You can't ask for it, but he put it right in your bread basket and you dropped it. You had it in your hand the first time. You didn't even secure the ball. They punched it out. It's the Mark Andrews game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Lamar's going to get some blame, but again, if we're going to hold Lamar accountable, and that's fine, but Mark Andrews, like I said, he's one of the best tight ends in the NFL. He can't get let off the hook, and it hurts me because, again, he used to play at OU, my Oklahoma Sooners. So, again, for those who just saying I'm being unfair to Lamar, I'm not holding Lamar accountable. No, I have to hold Mark Andrews accountable as well too. Because he's one of the best tight ends in the NFL, and also because again he played at OU. So I'm gonna hold anybody accountable. I mean, look, go back to a video I did. I held Kyler Murray accountable, and he went to OU. So I'm being consistent. That's all I'm being. But I think with Baltimore, champ, have they reached their limit? Is this as far as they can go, champ? Because unless Joe Burrow decides to say, you know what, I've had enough of Cincinnati. If you're going to lose T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I'm out of here. Is it over for Baltimore because Mahomes is still there? Allen is still there. You got to look at Denver. I mean, especially with what they had in Bo Nix, the first time they've been to the playoffs since the year they won the Super Bowl. The AFC is not easy, but as the Ravens, fair to say or unfair to say, have they reached their limit with Lamar?
No. I compare this year to the year that the Indianapolis Colts, when Peyton Manning had that record-breaking year when he broke the touchdown record that was set by Dan Marino.
2004.
2004. I compare it to that year, and then they went to the division round and they lost to Pittsburgh. What did they do almost a year or two after the fact? They won the Super Bowl. As long as you are the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, you have a chance to win the Super Bowl damn near every year. You're going to have the defense, number one. These receivers have come into their own, number two. And if Todd Monken stays, you're going to have the offense.
They're gonna think about giving him a head coaching job.
And look, I wouldn't blame anybody who does. But if I'm Todd Monken, I'm staying right there in the at that Baltimore Ravens facility. I'm not going anywhere at this point. But because regardless of who's the defensive coordinator, they're going to have at least a decent defense. They're going to have a good offense as long as Lamar's there. And especially with how he's grown. He's grown. And yeah, I don't think this is over. Like I said, we've seen guys have these mega caliber seasons as far as MVP levels, and then come back and lose during those seasons, and then come back a year later and year or two later and win a Super Bowl. We saw that happen with Peyton Manning. We saw that happen with Steve Young. We saw that happen with Aaron Rodgers. We saw that happen with a lot of guys who had MVP either caliber years or good years. And guess what? We thought the ride was over, but they came out and they proved it, and they proved it to be otherwise. So this is not over. And Lamar's only 27 years old. And with that press conference yesterday, he understands the urgency of it to get to the big dance. He understands the urgency of it. He's not a fool. He's not a fool. So with him understanding the urgency, with the Baltimore Ravens being the high-class organization that it is at this point, not to mention you have a coach like John Harbaugh, Todd Monken, and you have all of these great defensive players that are coming back right now, and probably no doubt Derrick Henry's going to be there at least for another year. You can't help but to succeed. You have a chance to make the Super Bowl every year. And Lamar, more and more, is understanding urgency. He wants to win a Super Bowl. He's not saying, well, we'll get him next year. He doesn't have this Tony Romo type of attitude where if it's the worst thing that ever happened to me, then, I'm a lucky man. No, he understands that urgency and the pressure in order for him to win the Super Bowl. So big ups to Lamar. He has a chance to win. And look, Pittsburgh still don't have a quarterback. They still middle of the pack team. So they may have to worry about them during the regular season, them first 10 games.
Oh,
But
not just Pittsburgh. Look at Cleveland. And
yes, but and that was discussed that at a later time. But the only person that he really has to worry about in that division, and you're really gonna have to ask yourself some questions about what happens during the off season, as far as what's gonna happen with T. Higgins and guys like that. The only person that he really has to worry about is Joe Burrow in this division. All of these other guys, Mike Tomlin will have a winning season, but I'm not worried about him beating me in the playoffs anymore.
You're not worried about You're not worried about Martin Luther King Winston?
No, I'm not worried about Martin Luther King Winston. So I'm not worried about any of those quarterbacks that they have at Pittsburgh. I'm not worried about Cleveland because they've proven time and time again that they don't know how to manage their team. So the only team I'm really worried about at this point, really catching up and passing me at this point, is the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's all going to depend on if they can bring back this team, that this core that they have over the course of this season, over the course of next season. If they can bring back T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, which I've been on record, even on your show, saying that if you don't bring back my guys, I'm retiring, or you can trade me one because I ain't coming back.
I agree. Last topic before we wrap it up. What were your thoughts about Ben Johnson going to Chicago? I already did a video. I'm quite sure you saw it on my TikTok.
Yes.
He's got something to prove with this offense because again, quarterback with Caleb Williams, really talented young quarterback, but was sacked a lot of times this season. I think it was like over 60. So, hey, as you often said, quarterback can't throw behind his back, but at the same time, he holds on to the football a little too long, though. I do like it for Ben Johnson because, again, let me start off with a young team with potential. Maybe I'll come up with a game plan to put my quarterback in the best type of situation to succeed. Hopefully, it'll help him get the ball out quicker. It's surprising, though, that he went to Chicago. I thought he could have went somewhere else in the NFC or in the AFC. But, hey, Chicago probably offered him more money than we don't know. And look, Chicago, they got to do something because again, you moved on from Justin Fields. Now you got Caleb Williams as your quarterback. I'm quite sure the GM, he's on the hot seat. They had to move on from Matt Eberflus. And again, if you don't work out with Caleb Williams, I don't know what will. Because you when's the last time the Bears actually had a good quarterback or a competent quarterback? I mean, you have to go back to what Jay Cutler, who at that point was the epitome of Jeff George, someone that you do not like at all, champ.
A rich man's Jeff George, by the way. I would say he was a little bit better than Jeff George. He at least made the Pro Bowl that year when they went to the NFC Championship.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, him and Jim McMahon. So, hey, what I like about Chicago is they're proving that they're just not going to stick with that old formula. That old formula of defense, defense, defense. It's not going to win now. It's already been proven. You tried that with Mitch Trubisky when you had that stifling defense with Raekwon Smith and company up there, and you couldn't generate enough offense in order to get past certain teams. You lost in the wild card round. So this is before Raekwon Smith went to Baltimore. You had a solid nucleus up there with those guys, and guess what? The game passed them by because you drafted Mitch Trubisky instead of drafting a competent quarterback. That's number one. Number two,
Two, Mahomes and Watson at the time.
Yeah, Mahomes and Watson at the time. And when we say at the time, we stress with the capital S at the time.
Not only they drafted Trubisky, they moved up in the draft to take him.
Yes. So, yeah, at least it proves that you're not playing about trying to develop this young quarterback and trying to get this offense, and you're changing along with the times. Because the formula that you had in 1985 and in 2006 to get you to the Super Bowl, that's not going to work anymore. So I'm glad that they did that, number one. Number two, I think this was the best option for him to go. I mean, you have weapons in place. You have great defensive players in place. The only thing you are missing in Chi-Town, the only thing you missing in the Chi is something that you're known for outside of defense, and that's that O-line. Like I keep saying, people keep talking about the quarterback is the most important position in football. I disagree. It's them big boys in front. Because when them big boys in front and you got a great offensive line, quarterback going to get his, the running back going to get his, and as a result of them getting theirs, the receivers are going to get theirs. If you have any type of competent quarterback. But the only thing that the Chicago Bears are missing at this point is them big boys up front. And they just hired a very good defensive mind. A lot of guys are not meant to be good head coaches, but they can be good defensive coordinator. They just went out and got Dennis Allen from the New Orleans Saints. He's a good defensive mind to go along with Ben Johnson's offense. It's going to be interesting to see who he gets as his offensive coordinator, or if he's just going to be calling all the plays himself. But the thing is this. You have to ask yourself this. Is this do or die for that organization? Because the thing is, you haven't had a quarterback in years. You've let good defenses go to waste. So you could fire, like I said, you could fire everybody, including the man that said the popcorn on the third floor in the stadium, until the front office gets right, then you're not going to go anywhere. But I'm glad, especially with them moving into this new stadium in a couple of years, you could best believe that crossed their mind as well. Because, you know, Chicago is building a new stadium, Soldier Field. So I'm glad that they're showing their fans that we're trying to put ourselves in place so we can get this young quarterback the best chance in the world in order to succeed. These weapons, we've already invested in them, in DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly.
Rome Odunze, yes.
Rome Odunze, you know, Dalton Schultz, guys like that. I'm glad that they're showing that they're not playing as far as the front office is concerned, as far as the coaching is concerned, as far as putting certain pieces in place in order to develop their young quarterback. But the jury's still out, not on Caleb Williams, but at organization. This is 3 straight first round picks that you've ruined on quarterbacks. And Caleb Williams this is two that you've ruined. Let me take that back. It's two that you've ruined. Mitch Trubisky, which the jury was kind of off and on him, Justin Fields, and now Caleb. So if this is the third quarterback that you ruin, it says a lot more about that organization than it does the quarterbacks. Because the same thing was happening last year during the course of this year with Caleb Williams that was happening to Justin Fields last year. So I'm glad that this organization said we're not playing anymore. We're finna change along with the times, bring someone that is modern in this organization, and get our young quarterback to rolling the way we know he can, especially in this division.
Absolutely.
Because you're gonna have to deal with Jordan Love for at least the next 10 years. Who knows what what JJ McCarthy is gonna do if they even stick with him, or Sam Darnold. Who knows what they're gonna do? They were great this year. And you got to deal with Jared Goff for at least the next 3 to 4 years. So you're going to need solid quarterback play. That formula that happened in 1985 and in 2006, that's not going to work. You have to get your priorities straight and get this offense to roll.
I think this was a good hire. It's going to take him a lot of work, though, champ. But I will say this: if I'm Dan Campbell, I am concerned because I lost my brilliant offensive mind. I may have the potential of losing my defensive mind in Aaron Glenn, and it's not going to be easy because, again, the NFC North, people have forgotten with Chicago. Before they went on, they were 4-2 at one point.
Mm-hmm.
They were 4-2 at one point. And before that victory against Green Bay in the season finale, they lost 10 consecutive games. 10. They were 4-2, and then unfortunately for them, Tyreek Stevenson, the DC Hail Mary. I think that was the turning point of that season, because from that point they just couldn't find ways to win. And I think with Caleb Williams, he gets a lot of criticism because of his personality, his style, the way he plays football. On top of that, there were a lot of comparisons with him and Patrick Mahomes. But at the same time, even though he's going to get criticism regardless, you have to look at the Bears organization. They still to this day haven't had a success with their quarterback. Washington, believe it or not, as moribund as they've been, they've had some success with quarterback play. I mean, RG3 for 1 year, but we did have Kirk Cousins for a little while, 3 consecutive seasons of 4,000 yards. Before that, we did have Doug Williams. We did have Joe Theismann. And that's shocking to say, though, champ. But with the Bears, they have to realize we got to get ahead of the times. We don't want to forget our defense. We can't ignore defense because defense has been synonymous with Chicago. But the times have evolved. We got to incorporate more of the passing game. I think with Ben Johnson, look, if it doesn't work out for Caleb Williams in Chicago, then honestly, I don't know what to say if you're Chicago. You're going to have to consider firing the GM or somebody else. Somebody else is going to lose their job because I don't know what more could I possibly do. But that's really about it. But anyway, champ, pleasure having you on the pod. We'll see. We'll have the podcast back on Friday night. By the way, folks, TikTok is back on. Thank God. Enjoy it for now. If you're content creators like Champ and I, use that opportunity to do as much content because you never know what's going to happen. And of course, you can't forget about the money. Mm-hmm. Undisputed World Champ, always a pleasure having you on the pod. Please go follow Champ on IG, TikTok, YouTube, and please go check out his podcast every Thursday or Saturday nights, the Undisputed World Champ. Any final words before we wrap up the show, man?
Thank you for inviting me once again. I really appreciate it. And thank you for putting me on and always giving me a voice. I really appreciate it, man. So, hey, I appreciate everything. And look, to the audience out there, love each other. We're transitioning into another time and another era. Read between the lines. So take this time to love on your people and look out for each other. Look out for each other. We need to now more than ever. every race and creed need to look out for each other.
Absolutely. And on that note, we're going to wrap up the show. Thank y'all for tuning in, and we is out. Peace.